got you clear down here, Phil. I didn't know.
I like my seat.
Okay.
Good evening. How are we? Good.
Oh, it was fun. They did.
You guys do any good?
They did. They ended up they
I didn't know,
6-2 on.
Okay.
It was just.
So what days?
It was
were there?
Sunday. We were there.
Yeah.
I have to look.
I was on board.
Sunday. That was.
Yes, and if it doesn't seem like it's loud enough, I'll turn it
We were
up
there the
more.
20th
I
through the
backed it off
20th.
today 'cause I had a lot of
Crazies coming into the council
But I'm
meeting.
working on the entire system.
At night it rained really hard and surprising.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fun.
Oh, good.
Did you poke at it?
Not that day. It was blowing 30 that day.
Oh, really?
Okay, it's 7 o'clock. Meeting has begun for April 8th, 2024 at 7 p.m. May I get roll call?
Mayor Candace Machado,
Here.
Councilmember Daisha Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Greg Flusvig asked to be excused tonight. Councilmember Phil Gerking.
Here.
Town Attorney Scott Murray asked to be excused tonight. Town Engineer Shane Porter.
Here.
Town Treasurer Lexi Erickson.
Here.
Chief of Police Mike Thompson. Fire Chief Leo Malsum asked to be excused tonight. Public Works Director Robert Llewellyn asked to be excused tonight. Town Clerk Janelle Underwood and rested citizens.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, do I have approval of the agenda?
All motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, item 1, consent agenda. A, approval of minutes for regular meeting March 25th, 2024, and work session April 1st, 2024. B, approval of business license Platte River Auto, and C, approval of bills. Do I have a motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 2, resolution number 5-2024, declare intent to create local assessment district HAT 6 Industrial Park amended.
So, good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. So this resolution was approved on the March 11th council meeting. Shortly after that, we were reviewing it and getting ready to publish for the LAD, and we noticed that the date that was in the resolution for publishing the LAD was wrong. It was a Wednesday, and the Tribune doesn't publish on Wednesdays, and so we're amending resolution number 5 to correct that date. So we have it set now to publish in the paper on April 25th, with objections due by May 10th, and a public hearing will be held on May 13th. So this is the same resolution, but just amending that published date.
I move we amend the date. What, April 25th?
Well, we just need to approve resolution 5-2024 again. Right?
As amended.
Yeah, approve resolution as amended.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, item 3, Metro Animal Control. So we've placed Metro Animal Control on the agenda for tonight as we had a work session last Monday regarding a discussion about potentially going into a joint powers board with the other municipalities around around and in Natrona County. We will be going forth in those discussions on April 17th to determine whether or not if Evansville wants to go into a joint powers board with Mills, Barnum, and Casper to move forward with a Metro Animal Task Force or Metro Animal Shelter to continue moving forward with Evansville being a part of the Metro Animal Shelter. Chief, do you have any information regarding this, or is there anything that I'm missing or that I have left out?
Nothing new since the workshop outside of the email I sent last week with the second option if we decide to go our own way.
So tonight we have it listed on the agenda to have any further discussion. Technically, the meeting is April 17th. If we determine to go into the Joint Powers Board with other municipalities, so we can determine either where we're sitting tonight, or we can go ahead and wait until April 17th to get additional information that we don't currently have right now about what the Joint Powers Board might actually entail if we decide to proceed forward with going into still being a part of the Metro Animal Shelter. Any thoughts, discussion?
I got one question and then a comment. Chief Thompson, when we were talking about the number of animals that would be in there at any one time, how many? I think Randy had a figure of like 3 or 4 or something. Is that right, or is that like not remember things correctly?
3 to 5 potentially, with the idea that we want to grow into the future if we go forward.
So what do you think the peak would be? I mean, I know it's a tough question.
I couldn't honestly give you an answer to that because we could have a case tomorrow that peaks us out. Like if we have the type of hoarding case or,
Right. And we would have those emergencies that we would never have enough space.
if we get a new resident that moves into town, from another community that brings problems with them, with animals, like the average right now, 3 to 5 when we have them. But as far as peaking out,
Who knows?
Yeah.
Um,
we obviously don't want to, if we go our own direction, I don't think we want to look at 3 to 5 because you always want to have that
Right.
extra
Right.
room.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess I was just in the thought, we don't need to build one for 30,
Right.
Probably somewhere between 5 and 20, maybe, right?
Yep.
The comment that I had is your thoughts on the email that you sent out with the different structure. I agree completely. I think that's a great idea. That's something I was gonna ask you about because I think at this time, and anyway, at my tender young age, I know 40 years is not a problem. It won't be my problem anymore. So,
Right. Speaking towards that, mind you, it's just a rough number.
sure,
So with the stuff I gave you, the 12 run 20 by 60 unit, with the additions needed, baseline cost, the concrete pad, outside of, I put 30,000 as utility hookups. It could be more, it could be less. I don't know the answer to that, but right now it'd be roughly in the 198,000 range. But they're 4 to 6 weeks in delivery time if we went with that. And as long as the concrete slab is in place and the extras, it's plug and play. Now they have some different configures. The gal I spoke with, she said that the best for intake animals, which is what we typically deal with, is the 24 by 60 because it's just one aisle and then there's kennels on either side. In her opinion, but obviously, it's our own community, so we can look at that. So I think there's another one that's it's a 12 run 14 by 54 that the base price is 69,000. So it shaves off roughly 30,000 from
the other one that I just roughly, if this is the direction that you choose to go, you know, I can call them and they work up the quotes and whatever. So,
Sure, that's why I was asking about that.
yeah.
Never brings another question to my mind. Now, Metro is a kill facility, correct?
Correct.
Would we be, in your mind?
Not necessarily. The realistic answer is there are going to be times that we may have to euthanize an animal. Primarily, we would be non-kill shelter, but there are, whether it be medical, you know, vicious dog, you know, there are exceptions to that, but the idea was we would be no kill. But the reality is that there is times that we would have to put an animal down.
And just to clarify on your question to the kill shelter, with the conversations last year that they were having, they had given us real time numbers in terms of how many animals that they've had to euthanize over there. And I'm not going to say this is 100% accurate, but I feel like we're roughly in that number. That I do believe that it was under 9 in the last decade. That at least I remember seeing those numbers in that work session months and months prior, back in, I would say probably October. I had seen those numbers. I do not believe that it was over 9 in the last decade that they've had to euthanize. And the way that it was presented to me was that they had to euthanize those animals due to aggressive nature or illness, and that it did not go out of those 2 scopes. So I just wanted to clarify at least that piece of at least the information that they had given us late last year when they had originally started working a little bit more on the task force. The joint powers discussion started late last year, but it really didn't, like, the discussions didn't really ramp up. As you would say, they didn't really ramp up until probably January, February. Yeah. And that's a part of the discussion to have, at least tonight, is technically on April 17th, the municipalities will go into a conversation about whether or not if we all want to be a part of a building moving forward with Metro Animal Shelter. And sharing the cost. Thank you. Yes. And sharing the cost. And so those were the numbers that we had provided everybody at the work session the other night. Now, granted, those numbers could shift and change every year, dependent upon the. Mike, you have the numbers in front of you, or excuse me, Chief, you have the numbers in front of you. It was 3.
Mayor's 3.46% currently.
3.46% currently. But we were told in that meeting that that rate could go up or could go down dependent upon the year. So those are projection numbers that we would be going into, but we also went into that discussion where we had discussed specifically, would each municipality have a vote? Would each of us have a vote, and what would that vote look like? And we were informed that Casper would have more of the vote because they will be putting in more of the cost for the new facility if we go that direction. Now, up to this point, I don't have any new updates, at least on my end, regarding anybody being able to give me any more additional information regarding any updates on what the Joint Powers Board would potentially look like. The April 17th meeting is just for us to determine as a town whether or not if we would like to be a part of the Joint Powers Board moving forward. And then at that point, then every single municipality that's involved will start laying out the specifics about what it looks like. So we don't technically have to make an actual decision tonight if we choose not to, but we do at least want to go into the April 17th meeting with an understanding on where we're sitting. And so we need to determine, do we want to make a choice and a decision about proceeding forward with the Joint Powers Board with all of the municipalities to work on being a part of a new facility for Metro Animal Shelter, or do we want to hold off at this point? And again, I have no new updated information. I've got calls in, but I haven't been able to get back in touch with anybody yet regarding if there's any updated information. And I really don't foresee there being any updated information right now until we move into the April 17th meeting. And as of right now, that meeting has not been canceled or rescheduled or changed, at least as what I've seen so far.
So I think at the work session, we kind of talked about that we would go ahead. I think the general consensus was that we would go ahead and attend the meeting. Hopefully,
The April 17th meeting.
April 17th meeting, gather some information. And then Mayor and Chief Thompson, I think from a council, from my standpoint anyway, I assume it's probably for the rest of the council, I think it'd be very helpful to have some kind of an idea of what our operation costs would be. And I know that's hard. But I wouldn't worry about, the building doesn't concern me, but the ongoing costs, what we have a ballpark of what we think it'll cost. And I, for one, wouldn't hold anybody's feet to the fire about it. But I think it would be nice to have, because right now we're paying, what, $2,500 a month, $2,600 a month, something like that. I guess, can we stay within that? But, and you don't have to answer that tonight, but I just think, we could put some thought into that. And because that for me is a big thing, if we can keep somewhere in the vicinity of that cost. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And that was a cost, was a part of the discussion a couple of years ago when we started having this discussion about wanting to potentially do our own thing as a town. And cost was a part of that discussion then at that point, because we were potentially looking at it back then as well. I don't think that there's anything wrong with what you're saying in terms of, I'd like to see operation costs. I'd like to understand how much it's going to be for the town. But what I also heard you say is that you would like for us to go into the April 17th meeting and get some additional information, correct?
Yeah, that's my feeling. Unless somebody's,
I don't know how much
Better idea.
information we're honestly going to get out of the 17th meeting. My understanding was they wanted us to come back with what we would, like to see in a joint powers board. Nobody is yet to provide that information to them. I honestly feel like the 17th is more of a are you in or you're out type moving forward type conversation. And if we're in, then obviously more open to what we would like to see in that conversation, in the joint powers board is my understanding of it. Because at this point, these are preliminary numbers given. I don't know that any of this would have changed from the last meeting to the next meeting.
I don't foresee anything changing unless it's a yay or nay. So that would be where the cost, the
In
differentiation in cost.
Yeah, the only new information I suspect that will be in the 17th is whether they've hired somebody to take over running the shelter as a manager that they've been working on, which I don't know that that's really pertinent to the discussion.
well, it was kind of a little bit of a concern to me because what are going to be involved in the fees that management company's going to, But I guess that's why I was asking the question if we think we can stay within that $2,600 a month for operational costs, then maybe we can just go in and say, hey, we're gonna go put on our own yard.
And I can't at least say on
I
my end
can't either.
100% that we're going to
I
be
know-
able
I
to
know
stay
nothing
within
about
that realm. I do know that other municipalities have attempted to go off on their own and do their own thing, but at least from my conversations with them, they have been unsuccessful for various different reasons because of fees and employees and money and things like that. I do, however, agree with the chief that April 17th is going to be about them wanting to determine, are we in or are we out? That was pretty clear in the last meeting that we went to. And I think the hard part with either side we go is we don't actually know what's involved with the joint powers until we basically agree to the terms, and we don't really know on the other side how much this is going to cost the town to do this on our own, and what that pricing actually looks like until we get there. And on the other side of the joint powers, we don't actually know that if we determine we back out, we're not entirely sure what that would potentially look like. So we're kind of in a toss-up situation at this point in terms of where we go. I don't think that we don't at least attempt to do this. I mean, I think that there's a specific reason why this is coming up again for the second time of us having this discussion. And I don't think that we can completely say no to kind of proceeding forward with this because this is coming up again. But I do think that on the back end, we want to be fiscally responsible with the town's money on exactly whether or not if we can financially do this and what that's going to look like. But there is some concern around if we back out of the Joint Powers Board and things don't go well, are we able to get back in? And that is not an answer that I have been given up to this point.
Okay.
Just to be fully transparent.
Sure. Because we have one advantage, I think, over other towns that have tried this, and that we have branded. And
That is correct.
anybody
Yes.
else that's just starting from scratch doesn't have that advantage. So basically, I think, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at the cost to operate the facility, not necessarily because the other part we're doing anyway, right?
For the animal control
For
side.
the animal control and the code enforcement, that type of thing, we're already doing. So we're basically really, I guess is what I'm asking is, and to me, it ought to be realistic that we could stay within that $2,500 to $2,600 a month to operate.
Considering how many animals, Chief, that you had mentioned.
Correct. So just as a rough number, if you do a commercial 20-year at 7% interest on say 200,000, it's $1,240 a month is the approximate payment. Now, like we talked about the USDA grant stuff on an unrelated topic, but it can also be used to finance these things, which is a much lower interest rate. So I'll just throw 5% in there for now, and it could be lower than that with the USDA, but at 5%, it's $1,055. So it's basically $200 a difference just in that interest rate. So at the 7%, that leaves $1,260 a month in what we're currently spending towards the operations, which is $15,000 a year, give or take. So the utilities wouldn't be that much for what it is. There'd be a little extra cost, I'm sure, in the insurance because it's an extra structure, but it won't be earth shattering, I don't think. So I would say that $5,000 or less would be needed for insurance utilities, leaving roughly $10,000 a year, give or take, to either use, part-time people to help care for the animals and things like that. I'd have to spend some time. It's going to take me some time to put those numbers together to what it would potentially look like.
Yeah, I'm not even to be honest about it, I'm not even so concerned about the costs of the building. I'm mainly talking about operational costs. And that's where I say we should be able to say within that $2,500, $2,600. I don't worry about the capital expenditures so much because realistically, if we go through with the joint powers board or whatever they're gonna do, I think the costs on that were like 3,700. I think. Was it 3.74
So
somewhere? Right.
now, it looks like we're projected at direct and indirect to be about 30,000 a year. Granted, this is just projected numbers from Casper, so which is 2,500 a month now. Not set in stone numbers because we know that the costs are going to be can fluctuate, go up or down. You know, if we do joint powers again, we'll still have to figure out how to cost share a new building or refurbishing the current building, which is not a part of that yearly projection.
The problem is that building's never ours.
Correct.
Right. I guess, given the information that we have, my feeling is we go out on our own. Councilman Day, shoulder looking through.
There are pluses and minuses to
Both
either
ways,
side. And like playing a deck of cards, you know, if we're playing 21, we don't know what cards are going to get played on either side of this down the road. That's the root of the discussion. And in a sense is, are we going to be better managing it on our own fiscally? You know, either side, you're going to have bumps and bruises that come with either side. Part of me says, which one can we control the cost better than the other? We already know the care of the animal equation. We know the answer to that. We had that during the workshop. I think that's one thing that, you know, the citizens have interest in that. But again, it's a deck of cards at this point.
So I think we have to determine, do we want to be in the joint powers board so that when the chief and I go into the discussion on the 17th, that we can give them a definite yes or no, because that's what they are going to require and ask of us. So at least we would need to have a choice and a decision made in terms of, are we a yes or a no for proceeding forward with the joint powers board?
Is, you know, the only, I agree with you, I think that's what they're gonna want. If we don't give them an answer, they're gonna say.
Yeah, they've been specific
Tell us
about
or
that.
something.
Yeah.
You know,
They've been
so
specific about it.
I guess given the information that we have, and part of the other thing that concerns me, I mean, this really concerns me, is it's not just the money. It's the, all of a sudden, we've got an outside, they're talking about having an outside vendor come in and run this place. But what are the new rules? We have no control over that. Casper's got 75% of the, I'm talking
70.
wrong figures here.
73.7.
But they've got 70-some percent of the vote, so basically whatever Casper wants, Casper gets. And so we're not gonna have any input into that. And thinking about the citizens of Evansville, you know, I know if something happened when my dog got out and all of a sudden the rules have changed and all of a sudden my dog isn't there anymore, I'd be a pretty unhappy camper. But at least in Evansville, we've got a way of doing things and we're a little more proactive toward our citizens and the animals and whatnot. I mean, Randy goes above and beyond. I mean, posting pictures and making phone calls and doing all this stuff. We're not gonna have that with the joint powers board. And I think that's something else to consider, even if it costs a little more money. As long as we can afford it.
And Brandy's done a remarkable job with a lot of assistance from other staff, to include some citizens in town, about not taking our animals from Evansville to the shelter because of the issues going up there. My understanding is they had another parvo breakout after the workshop. that can happen in any shelter. But I think, you know, and it's a tough decision. I'm glad you guys have to make it, not me. There's concerns on both sides of the aisle on my end, because if we do our own thing, obviously, you know, it's on my shoulders to make it work. And you're right, Brandy's a huge asset to this. But there's a lot of unknowns, and not to say that there's a trust factor out there, but there is a trust factor going the other direction. I think that maybe the biggest animal in the discussion is the trust side of it.
Okay. So my thoughts on it are, when it comes to the amount with the joint, and so far with what we've seen in the Joint Powers Board, I'm really on the fence about both of them. However, when it comes to the stake that Evansville would have in the Joint Powers Board, I don't think that's fair. And with the smaller municipalities, I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's enough of an amount to have the smaller communities have a say in what's going on. As far as going with our own thing, I have some thoughts on it. I have some questions on it. But at the end of the day, I think that it might not necessarily be a bad thing to go out on our own after all the kinks and stuff are worked out.
Okay, so
Just quick tidbit. So in the breakup of expected percentages, if Mills, Evansville, bar none, and Natrona County, which are linked together, that's 26.2% of 100%. So no matter the breakup of the board and however many members, because they talk very specifically proportional, even if the other ones all get together, they're completely still outvoted every time by the larger municipality. And if I was on that side of the line, I'd be advocating that, yep, we pay the lion's share, and therefore what we say goes. I totally understand that argument. Unfortunately, I'm on this side of the line with Evansville, and my alignments are here. So that is one of my bigger concerns. Is they say, yes, we want to hear from you guys. We want your involvement. You're having, involvements, but at what truly voice would the municipalities outside of Casper and the county really have at that makeup of percentages? I get why they want to change the model, mirroring like Cheyenne, because as a private entity managing it, oversaw by a board, it can, again, playing that deck of cards, it could be a 10, it could be a jack, I don't know, it could be an ace that brings in private money. It's a model that works well in Cheyenne, because a lot of people, they support kids, they support animals. So that could help eventually lower the costs. I don't know what card that is when in that deck of cards. Like, I don't know, like it sounds really good, and I know it works in Cheyenne. I don't know if it would truly work up here. Like, we have a different social culture up here. We have a different dynamic. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think Cheyenne's got as many players in the game as we do.
Correct.
The second, to Deja's point, the problem is if we all had one vote, there's nothing stopping Casper, bar none, and Mills from doing whatever, and maybe the county and we don't agree with that, doesn't matter. We've got our voting street too. So I'm not real crazy about us getting into a situation that we can control.
In my prior position before coming here, saying this Delco, we didn't have the amount of dogs that we deal with here in Evansville. Smaller community. We had a facility that had, call it a 2-car garage simply in size, that had 7 pens on one side with outside runs. And 1 to 2 dogs a month. Most of the time they went back to the owners. We didn't have an animal control officer. It was handled strictly by myself, the records clerk, and my officers at the time. And we managed to do that for 5.5 years. In these things that I've given you guys, as far as building structures, they're conservative numbers with the idea of growing to the future. We know that we're going to grow in houses at some point. We know Natrona's County as a whole is going to keep growing. So I think that has to be one consideration of that. I'm not proposing a Taj Mahal. I'm not looking at a Mercedes Diet on a Honda budget. I think these are realistic to our community. Granted, we do have more dogs and deal with it more than the prior place. So using that as a model, if we have some people that are vetted that we can pay part-time when we have or need for them, and I'm going to use one of our members in the audience. Sorry. She does dog washing as a business. She may or may not have interest in doing that. And I know there's other people in the community that if it's 2 or 3 hours on a weekend in the morning to come in and make sure the 3 or 5 or maybe 8 dogs or whatever we have are fed and watered, and then the officers on duty, other people within the town staff, if they're willing to help out, I'm okay even paying a little extra overtime, and I would imagine those departments probably would too. Like, I think it's doable internally if we choose to go that direction. I don't think it's a huge mountain. Granted, there's some obstacles there, but I'm not looking at a Mercedes Taj Mahal facility with grand spectator rooms of adoptions. It's a safe place that's clean, that's well kept for the animals, where people can come and retrieve them, and they can be kept and taken care of.
Chief Thompson, if we did have said volunteers that came in to help manage the dogs, and if there was an animal that was to bite that person, or if they were to get hurt, is that covered? Would that be covered under insurance? Is that cost to the town?
That is something that Janelle and I were looking into as far as the liability side of workman's comp stuff. Don't have an answer for that yet, Council Lady.
Thank you.
So do we have a motion to remove the town of Evansville from the Metro Animal Shelter Joint Powers Board? Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We will remove ourselves from the Joint Powers Board for Metro Animal Shelter. All right, moving forward. Item 4, cancellation of May 27th, 2024 council meeting due to it being Memorial Day, and moving the council meeting and rescheduling it for May 28th, 2024. Do I have a motion to reschedule the meeting due to a holiday?
All motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Engineers report.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. So a couple of things tonight. My engineer report was part of the backup, but two things to go over. I have the Lathir Pro Pathway Project. I have drawdown request number 7 tonight for approval. This drawdown request consists of WLC invoices for the design of the project totaling $9,077.75. The grant covers 80% for total drawdown request of $7,262.20. Leaves a remaining balance on the grant of $555,950. Just recommend looking at the bank side of that drawdown request number 7 for resolution.
Do I have a motion?
All motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Any questions for our town engineer? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Fell asleep there for a minute.
I'm like, motion passes. Okay.
So it's just an update on that project as well. Crown Construction was awarded that project. I actually had a pre-construction meeting last week and actually started on the project today. Working away on it. I think that they will move really fast. I think they have an August completion date, but pre-construction meeting will be done in May. So continuing on, so I have a few other pay requests tonight, Crown Construction. The first one is on the Everville Sidewalk Project, pay request number 3. And again, this is the WCDA Community Development Block Grant Project. The pay request, the total amount of the pay request from Crown Construction is $221,197. My recommendation is to make payments of $217,978.50 and withhold $3,218.50 from retainage. So through pay estimate number 3, we'll have a total retainage of $24,662.50, which is the required 5%. In retainage, the project is substantially complete. We had a walkthrough last week. We had a few minor items for correction on the punch list. And project is complete. Pay Crown Construction to pay us number 3 in the amount of $217,978.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Any questions for our town engineer? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I also have, it wasn't in my packet, it was late Friday afternoon, but I have a certificate of substantial completion on the same project. We issued those certificates when the contractor is complete, it's like a review process. So I have the certificate tonight. I recommend more than the mayor sign this.
All motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just have one comment. I think it looks awesome down there, and I think it's a huge improvement. I think it looks nice. I like it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And just to add to that, I guess, I brought it up, but, it looks like we're gonna be under budget on that project by a fair amount. If I remember right, we're about $50,000 over budget, and the town is looking like to kick in that amount. If the numbers I'm looking at, I mean, it's gonna be real close to getting some final added money, but it looks like we may be about $60,000. It is pretty well. So continuing on, so I have 2 more pay requests. They are related to the town hall repairs and sewer repairs. So the first one I have is pay request number 2 on the connection of the sewer line out to the town sewer in the alley. So this project, that work is 100% complete. The asphalt repaired and the concrete work repaired. This pay request is for $19,950. We recommend payment of $18,952.50 and withhold $997.50 for retainage. So through this pay estimate number 2, we'll have $4,240 for retainage. Project is 100% complete. I guess it should be, hold the retainage throughout the project. Or something like that we need to address. And before we release out the retainage, we do a public advertisement. Advertised in papers, advertised twice, 41-day period. That is what's generally for the subcontractors that haven't been paid. Get aware of that. So anyway, that's what the case is for. Again, just recommend motion to pay Crown Construction, $18,900.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Questions for the town engineer? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The last pay request is for the flood one and flood two repairs and the sewer connection was made to the 201. We haven't paid final payment on that because asphalt, concrete, and whatnot. So all that's 100% complete now. So this pay request number 3 for the flood one, flood two, and the sewer lines for 201. It bills the sewer line for 201 to 100% complete, and the flood one and flood two repairs are 95% complete. And the dollar amount for the pay request number 3, the total amount of pay request is $30,250. Recommend payment of $28,562.50, and we withhold $1,687 for retainage. I believe the total retainage withheld to date is 5% of the contract amount, $43,000.
Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Any discussion?
I got a question. This is for the downstairs stuff, right?
The downstairs and the additional sewer line downstairs.
I don't know if it's just my imagination. When I drive up there, because we weren't supposed to have negative drainage coming back towards the building. Now it looks like it is. Is it just the way I look at it?
I think it might be, because we looked at it real hard. We put together a pretty detailed design, working with the contractor, staked it out for them, and kind of how somebody formed it. They got the work done, and the next day, we had a pretty good rainstorm. I came out here and I stood there, and you can see it.
It
The
did
water, any water that's going down the stairs now is from what falls on
on the stairs. Okay, because
That's what I would.
Yeah,
See the same thing, but it did look like, it was pretty obvious that it was flowing.
but doesn't it look like it? I don't know. It was just when I looked at it, I'm going, huh.
It significantly flows more away from the building
Okay,
now than it
all
did
right.
prior to the concrete
Okay.
work.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just might have been an optical illusion or something.
It can be sometimes.
I was almost going to bring a level over for there. You did? Well, awesome. I figured you guys were on top of it. But,
Just to clarify, do we have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
That's all.
Thank you. All right, council updates. So I wanted to bring this up in, oh, excuse me. Thank you. I will backtrack. We need to, do I have a motion to approve the engineer's report?
A whole motion to approve engineer's report.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, ma'am. Keeping me humble over here. I like it. Okay. Now we will go to council updates. So I wanted to bring this up in council updates. So we just went through. Yes. Oh, I thought you were going to say something additional to me. I'm like, did I forget something? We just went ahead and went through the town budgets for the town of Evansville last week with every department, and we are potentially looking at doing a work session possibly on May 20th at 5 p.m. for a work session to go over in detail with the budgets for the town. Is everybody available for May 20th at 5 p.m. to go over the town budgets?
So we have copies of that ahead of time.
Yes, we will.
A week or two.
Miss Erickson, our town treasurer.
A week? Okay. Just didn't want to do the night before.
Absolutely. So
The 20th is great for me.
is the 20th okay for you? Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and go into the work session, budget work session on May 20th at 5 p.m. regarding that. The only other update is we are still accepting applications for town council. The application deadline is May 1st at 5 p.m. And then we will be going in on May 13th with our application interview process at the May 13th council session. And that's at least all of the updates that I have. Does anybody else have any updates?
I do.
Wonderful.
Right?
Yes.
Got a couple things. I think I got several since I wasn't here last week. First of all, on the frontage road, heading east from Curtis Street, I talked to Chad Agar over at YDOT, and he all of a sudden got cold feet and doesn't want to do that. Okay, because he's afraid people are going to cut across there and all the other stuff. So I asked him, I said, well, as far as I know, we haven't had any problems with anybody cutting across the other side. And I said, to be real honest about it, I said, it is a real eyesore and it's very hard to maintain. So anyway, and Mayor, I apologize, but when we met tonight, I was hoping I would have time to talk to you about this. But anyway, the process that we now have to go through is, he said, is what he told me, he says, what I'd like to have you do is go over my head. Okay? And I said, no, you sure you're not going to be upset? And he says, no, I want you to. And I've got the guy's name and it's in those notes that I left you. And so what we need to do is, we need to draft, it might be on the second page.
Yes.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, what we need to do is we need to draft a letter and basically probably meet with this guy and see if we can come up with an amicable situation on it. Okay? And we also have been discussing the entrances off the frontage road onto Curtis Street. Okay? He wants to do that. Where, and I guess Chief Thompson, the only issue I had there was with nobody in that convenience store place, if we aren't going to create a problem with people cutting through there. I don't know. It's something we can address later, but
They already do that,
yeah, I'm sure.
whether there's a road there or not. Part of why they do that actually is because the way that frontage road ties into Curtis, it's actually safer to go through the parking lot to turn onto
It is.
Curtis than trying to,
Right.
so that's why everybody's cutting through.
Yeah. But anyway, that was when I went out, I went and looked at it again, and that was the one thing that I could see. But anyway, Mayor, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about that, but if you would like Chief Thompson and I've been working on this for months. If you'd like have me proceed a little bit on this, and I don't know if we need to get engineering involved in this a little bit or something.
Can
I'm
I
not
ask
sure.
you a question? Actually, I'm a little confused. I thought when we talked about this, and I thought that I'm confused on when you're the frontage road. What about it? About doing what with it? No, because of the last I remember, the last time that it had come up in discussion, when Chief Malsum, we were just going to leave it the way it was. I'm confused on what you're trying to do.
Well, there's been, what the deal is YDOT would like to have the town of Evansville, this has come up in other conversations, and some of them that I had with Mayor Edwards, that they wanted, and Mayor Edwards wanted to take over YDOT wants us to take over the frontage roads. Okay?
Okay.
And Mayor Edwards' thoughts were that we could use those for other things, especially the one that's west of Curtis. Okay, because basically that would be blocked off and not used at all. There's no reason to use that frontage road. Because you can't get to the RV place from there anymore because they got it blocked off. If you look down there.
I thought that part of the road was gifted to Sunny's, and that
Oh, the part where Sonny's is at.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, but not Sonny's.
Smiths. I mean,
but,
sorry, Smiths. I got the place
yeah,
wrong.
Smith's. No,
Smiths. That's
but
why the
up to
campers.
there, they want from Curtis Street to, up to the RV place. They would like, YDOT wants us to take that over. Okay, in return is what they would do is they would take that whole intersection, make that whole intersection wheelchair accessible, dress it up, fix it up, make it very nice to go along with everything else we're doing here.
So in some discussions, are you familiar with the Texas Street project so Oildale, so speaking on the west side, there was discussion about Oildale and it making an entrance to the highway where Oildale meets the frontage road and closing it off at Curtis so that there's not all that congestion right on that corner. So you would have to just go down a little bit, you would turn, and then that puts you into Oildale, which takes you to the houses and Butch's and, the businesses down there. So eliminating the cross traffic there. And then on the,
Isn't there already a little section right there?
no, so you've got the borrow ditch, okay, and they took the fence out,
Correct.
but they have not created the access point from the highway to Oildale. You still have to turn at the light to come in to access it. So the idea is at where Oildale, because it comes up at an angle. So instead of going down to the vet clinic, they would create an access point to the highway there and then close down the frontage road to Curtis so that you're not bringing trailers, trying to go in and out here. You would come in here. And then on the east side of Curtis, with the idea of Texas Street pushing across the highway and meshing and going up towards Murdoch's, that would be your access point there, and then closing down the frontage road on either end of Curtis and Evans so that we're not having the
Okay, on that part, I
frustration.
thought that we had something about that several council meetings ago, but at this point, when Mayor Edwards was still here, but at that point, we had decided to squash that. Am I correct?
That is correct. There's no finding.
Correct, right now.
Okay.
Yeah, the Texas Street is future. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing.
When there's funding.
nothing there for that. But in the meantime, they want us, and while they are willing to fix up that Curtis Street corner there, and they're willing to pay for it, YDOT's willing to pay for it. But I'm more concerned with getting, to start with, because it'd be easy, is to get rid of that rickety old fence that's there, and it's a maintenance nightmare. I mean,
And I thought the fence thing was supposed to be going on this summer when I had talked with
Well,
Robert
that
about
was-
it. It was what my understanding was before you had even said anything.
Well, I've been working on this since the day after I got on the council. But anyway, the problem is that all of a sudden, I mean, this was like in the works and ready to go, and then winter hit, and so we were going to do it in the spring, and then all of a sudden, last Thursday, somewhere in there, all of a sudden, Whiteout got cold feet.
Took out the fence that way,
That way,
and then they've,
it looks awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
it looks, and it's very easy to take care of. We've done the lawnmowers right through the whole thing. And that's more of a concern to me than the other part. We're gonna have to do some work on, some thought thinking on it, but that part really needs to get done. I think it's a nice one.
I mean, I can't specifically say what your conversations were with our former mayor because Mayor Edwards did not invite me into those discussions or
Right.
disclose that to me as the council president. So there's not really a choice or decision that I can make at this point in time
Sure.
because I need additional information about what I'm actually going to be agreeing to. So if you can get me additional information, that would be wonderful. And then I would also like to chat with our town engineer as well to kind of get me a little bit more up to speed to maybe some information that I'm not privy to that maybe was involved with discussions before I became the mayor.
The only thing, Mayor, that we need to get done right now is to get the fence removed. I mean, that's,
I actually agree with that because it's an eyesore. It's ugly. I brought it up to YDOT 4.5 years ago.
and it was like, last fall, it was a done deal. It was just a matter of waiting
Yeah.
until spring.
You know, they voice concerns about people just driving through there, but they don't replace the stop signs farther to the east, and people literally drive on and off the highway all day long without stopping. So I think it moods their conversation on their end, but the fence is ugly, and Evansville is kind of a nice little community, and I think we should look nice. So,
So that, the other part is gonna take a lot of discussion.
Yes.
yeah.
But the fencing part, there's a discussion about taking the fencing out. And I'm looking at our town engineer specifically because,
No,
okay,
We don't
Okay.
have to,
Learning to-
we
Okay.
don't have to build anything, do anything. They're the ones that are responsible for that fence, so they take it out. You just have to mow it.
and in the prior discussions with the fence, before I became mayor, did YDOT say that they were willing to take out the fence, or am I
Yeah,
not
it was
hearing this
supposed to be
correctly?
coming- Yeah, it was supposed to be happening
Yeah.
when the weather.
So we
broke.
can at least
Yeah.
have you proceed forward with the fence
Okay,
part of the
that's-
discussion.
I guess that's.
And then
what
if
I'm
I
asking.
can, if I can get up to speed on the rest of
The
it.
rest of it is gonna take a lot of
Okay.
discussion. Yes,
The fencing, I would be fine with.
okay.
The additional side conversations that I don't have any
Yep.
understanding of, that will take a little bit extra time.
Okay, that's one thing. That was supposed to be the easy one. The other thing that I would like to have the council consider is that we do things like health insurance, license renewals, anything that's non-emergency, including renewing the bar licenses, approving daycare licenses, that we do those on the second Monday of the month. And then we will approve. Can I just finish, please? And I don't care which one we do them on, but, or that we do them and then we approve them at the second meeting of the month, okay? I, for one, do not like being put into a corner where we have to approve or disapprove, like with the daycare situation that we ran into, that we had to make a decision that night with no prior knowledge. I watched I wasn't here for the health insurance one, but if I could have called in, I would have had questions. But anyway, I just think that we ought to have time to think about these things and to make sure that we're on solid ground. And this is, again, something for discussion, but I think we ought to think about it. And if we need to change an ordinance or whatever, then we could think about doing that. The other thing that I would like to see us do that would hopefully cut back on Janelle for the work that she has to do, that licenses renew the same day as their insurance does, the same month that their insurance does. Then we don't have to be worrying about whether, and then we may have to make some provisions for, and again, these are just for discussion, but we may have to make some provisions for the fee, the $25 fee that they're paying, because somebody could theoretically come in, get a license, 3 months later, they gotta get this done. But it's like, we don't really have a chance to do anything on any of these things. And I don't think it's fair to the council to like the last meeting, the health insurance thing came in and nobody knew what was going on until the meeting. I just don't think that's fair for the council. And that's a $600,000 item, and I think it should take some. But anyway, that's just something that I would like to have the council consider. at some point in the future. The other thing is.
Before you move on,
Okay, go ahead.
because I just want to make sure, Janelle, what are your thoughts on this? Because you and I have had some extensive conversations about some of this. And so what are your thoughts or your feelings about this? Because a lot of the administrative work comes through you, and I think it would be helpful for the council to understand how things have operated within the town in terms of some of the things that he's suggesting or requesting, just so that we can hear from you, because you're the person that is handling and dealing with these things on a daily basis.
Well, I think that it would be good to hold a workshop, because you've kind of caught me off guard a little bit.
I'm sorry, and I
You know, I think,
Everybody's been
I
busy.
think renewing business licenses based off of their insurance expiration, I'm going to be dabbling in that daily, possibly. When you're talking close to 300 licenses,
but don't you have to, I guess my question is.
I
are we
do,
doing
yes,
that
I do
anyway?
receive them, but now you're talking about printing off a license, getting signatures. The way the ordinance is set up right now, if those licenses expire the end of December, they've got until the end of January to renew that license.
Okay,
And it's an automatically renewal. Now, if they don't renew it, then they have to reapply.
okay, so we're only doing new licenses,
Correct.
so we don't approve renewals.
No, because they've already
Okay.
been approved
All right,
once.
well, then that's a moot subject.
The other thing is, and this was set up by governing bodies in the past. Let's say I receive notification that a contractor wants to replace an electrical at a house, but he's not licensed in Evansville. My response is that we cannot issue approvals on this until they apply for the license. The way it's been set up in the past, if that contractor comes in, fills out their paperwork, presents their proof of insurance and their contractor's license, pays their fees, we can approve them to go forward with getting that work completed. And then when it comes to the council for approval, it's a matter of formality.
So if it's just a formality, why does the council have to approve it?
That's the way they had me set it up. Because the governing body's approving that license.
I'm just asking.
But you don't want to hold a contractor off for 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, no. I said non-emergency. If somebody needs something done,
But even if it's not an
I
emergency,
didn't know that this is ignorance on my part. I didn't know that we weren't approving renewals.
no.
We only approve.
The only renewals that get approved was the daycare licenses
And the bars.
and the bars.
Those two, then
Yes,
that's what I'm talking about.
yes.
We
And
should get those 2 weeks in advance so we can have discussion and a public hearing, and then we can vote.
so the liquor license renewals were sent out the 19th of December for a January 8th hearing.
Okay, but that's, I guess, here's my question, okay? Things come up in the public hearing like they did in the daycare one,
That's why we have public hearings
I
for the
understand,
liquor
but then
licenses.
we ought to have time to be able to research that before we have to make a decision. That's all I'm saying, is that we ought to have time, that we don't have to make a decision right there based on what 1 or 2 people say.
But that's when you table the renewal of that license
Then-
to the next meeting, is how it's been handled in the
I
past.
understand that. I understand that. Well, if we set it up that way, where it's just done that way, well, we can talk about it in a work session or something.
Then are you talking about 2 public hearings?
No,
Because by law, you're required to have the 1 public hearing.
well, that's right.
But if you're discussing liquor licenses one
But
night,
if we did the liquor license, had the public hearing,
Uh-huh.
and then vote the next meeting. Approve them the next meeting, so that if there are some issues, we got time to check them out, to make a decision.
I have a question for you on one of the things. So my question, like for instance, with the daycare issue, So if all of their approvals are okay via Chief Malsum with the fire department, if they're okay with public health, and if they're okay with DFS, because at the end of the day, DFS is their daycare, their licensed day, then why do we need to wait?
I understand. I agree with you.
That makes no sense
I agree
to
with
me.
you. I agree with you 100%, Deja, but that isn't what happened. It was a,
But they were okay with the fire department,
Yes.
I understand.
and
If that's,
and they were okay, to my knowledge, with the public health, and or DFS didn't close, because DFS has the authority to close them down as well.
Well, DFS was gonna close them down that night if we didn't approve their license. Yeah,
No, I don't
Yeah,
think that
they
would,
were.
no.
I
no.
think with some of these,
but
so
anyway, we can, these are just suggestions for us to think about. And we don't need to get into them tonight, but I think they need to be thought about. Okay?
So something that I think from my role as mayor, something that I'm going to suggest for the council members to consider and think about is, in the event that we have excess things that we want to focus on for work sessions, that they be emailed to me in advance so that we're not being blindsided. And
But see, you're saying the same
addressed.
thing that I'm saying.
I'm
You don't
not
wanna
though.
be- but
I'm
you
not.
are.
I'm not.
I don't want to, I'm not going to argue, but we kind of are because you don't want to be blindsided, neither do we.
I think that is where we can agree on.
That's-
Yes.
That's all I'm talking about.
But I think in terms of some of the suggestions and things that we would end up figuring out, we also have to take into consideration our suggestions and how they're going to impact the town employees and how they're going to impact the amount of work that we
Oh,
are going to
I agree.
require for town employees
To be-
to be addressing in the future.
And that was my fault. I didn't know that on the licenses, that I thought we were approving the licenses. And if they're already approved, if they've already done that stuff, I guess I'm not really understanding why we got to approve them, because they're already done, right?
The licenses, like even the one tonight, that's a brand new one.
Right. But it's already been approved before we approved it, right?
It's a formality.
Okay. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but that's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
I-
that's,
It was more of an example than anything, because it seems like it's been happening more and more. But anyway.
If I may,
Chief?
Councilman, Mayor, in the world of government, even if you change this, there's always going to be a daycare thing. I've been sitting in council meetings and doing this stuff for over a decade. The daycare is a complete fluke. In 12 years of me, 5.5 here in the other communities. And I don't know that you necessarily need to change your process over one or two particular events. I think it's coincidental that we had that, because it total surprise that morning, like we didn't know. And we had some spectators that came in wanting the town to do something when all we deal with is the business side of it. So take it for what it is, but my opinion is it's one or two events in a long period of time, and those events can just miraculously spring up, and there's no preparing or formalities that I think any of us can prepare you guys for, because I didn't know until mid-morning that we were going to have a mob of people here wanting the town to do something that we really couldn't do, because there's two different sides of the licensing of that. And unfortunately that any pre-planning or changing won't change that in the future is what I'm trying to say.
We don't need to get into a real long discussion about this, but even if
Right.
we'd have known about it at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock or whatever, I'm pretty vocal about stuff. But I would have had a chance. I don't like being blindsided about anything. I'd
No.
like to be able to.
Nobody does.
And I'm just trying to, we had a problem, let's address it, and let's make sure it doesn't happen again. And And it's really simple. I think we got, what, 3 daycares and 3 liquor establishments, or got more than that. We got more liquor establishments than that, but 6 or 7, 8,
7, I think.
Nine.
okay. whatever.
9?
But and it's once a year, but anyway, it's just something to think about. The last thing I want to talk about is the code of ethics. Since it came up in the workshop. And I know we tabled this until August. I did a bunch of reading and looking, and I couldn't find any code of ethics for any municipality, legislative body, anything, anybody. Couldn't find one. The only thing I could find was the state legislature has one that involves basically taking bribes and favors. Okay, I agree with that. And if we want to use the state legislature one and we use our oath, and if there's something that needs to change in our oath, that's fine. I have no problem with that. Because I think we're setting a dangerous precedent that all of a sudden we've got a whole bunch of new rules that if somebody breaks one of those rules, we got a problem. And to me, it's the voter's decision. Okay, that's not saying that if somebody does something immoral, they take or they get arrested for a felony, or they get convicted of a felony, or whatever. But that should take care of itself. And I think to have the town attorney spend whatever they get, $250 to $400 to $500 an hour to work on this stuff is an absolute waste of money. And I think as far as duties and stuff, I think that the mayor and the town clerk, I know the town clerk helped me out a lot, giving me guidance, and she still does. And sometimes she's got to slap my wrist and say, Phil, you can't do that. And that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. Mayor Edwards was extremely helpful. We spent hours in meetings, and I always had whole lists of questions, and he was always very patient and answered those for me. And I think that's a much better way of doing that. And anyway, that's all I really want to say about that. And I just had to get that up front. I thought about it all week, and that's kind of where my thoughts are on that. And with that, I'm done.
Any other thoughts? Council updates? All right, we're going to public comments. Does anybody have public comments? Yes, ma'am. Can you come up to the podium and state your name and where you live, please? Nice to meet you.
I would like to discuss an incident that happened on March 26th. My grandson was riding his scooter and he went to talk to the neighbor about the person he had. And they had passed the fostering dog through the program and they broke through the door and he's extremely lucky that he's wearing special common. And his sister had to witness this event, so it was very traumatic for them. They lost their mother in the boat, which one of them said. So on top of that, still trying to live that, they have to be able to come with this now. I guess my question is, why was this dog not made sure they had vaccines? He had to go through rabies shots. He's still going through rabies shots. Yes, he could have stopped them, but the doctor suggested he switch them out so that he has no restart. So that's just my question. Why was this not ensured that he's vaccinated? as well over the 30 days of being able to function.
Can I ask you a few questions? Okay, so I just want to kind of clarify that I'm following the story correctly. So your grandson got attacked. Whose dog was it?
It was my neighbor was fostering it for the
Neighbor was fostering it. Okay. I want to make sure that I get everything that you're saying here. Okay. Have you had any conversations with the neighbor?
I have, he had picked up resume and
Okay.
tested. Did not have
Okay. So you feel as though your neighbor did their due diligence as much as they could with handling the situation? Okay.
They were told that that's usually that certain cases can cost.
Okay. Is your grandson okay?
He's okay. There's stitches in the back of his head.
Okay.
But
Okay. And so, yeah, we would, yes, like to see those. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
I just want to stop this from happening to someone else.
We can bring those over. Were there, Miss Edwards, would you like to address your question?
Yes, please, yes, Mayor.
Thank you.
I guess my questions are, has it been brought to the town and or is that something that we would be paying for as his medical bills and or the replacement of his helmet? Do you know?
The police department already replaced the helmet, so that was not, but, I haven't talked to them. I wanted to just bring up, how are we gonna fix it?
Correct. Because my thoughts are, if that dog was in our program, would we be for it with medical bills on the sheets?
Well, generally, because the council isn't in the purview of PD policies, because that would make you an expert witness for liability purposes, and being you're not an expert witness, you would be purview to those policies. Generally, the first place you start with would be the chief when you have these questions, rather than coming to the council, which then we would explain why and the hows, because when you're not in that realm of policies and what we're doing, you can't answer those questions. So had you came and talked to me or brought those concerns to me, I could have probably answered your question sooner.
I was just under the understanding the foster program was under these guys, so that was my mix-up.
Well, they are the council. However, the program is run by the police department.
Okay.
Therefore, I am the chief for the program.
Yeah, I get that.
So there was some confusion about where to go, and
Yeah, I thought you guys were.
you're completely fine, dear, in terms of coming and talking to us.
I think I can answer those questions a lot better when we sit down.
Okay.
If you're okay with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was just, like I said, the program that you were trying to have. Police department.
There's no misunderstanding. You can't misunderstand something that you don't
Yeah.
understand, right?
Right.
So it's okay. We're working together, trying to figure out the best route forward, and the chief is definitely a person who would be your go-to person to talk to about this. I'm very thankful that your grandson is okay and doing better. And I would definitely love for you guys to chat further about how we can assist as much as we possibly can as a town. Thank you, ma'am. Any other public comments? Public comments. Last call for public comments. All right, public comments are closed. Meeting adjourned.
I will motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
And I second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Motion passes. All right. I got swift on that one. That's okay. I was like, pow. Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
All motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Meeting adjourns at 8:23 p.m.